Welcome, Money Buddies, to this week's episode of Money Talk. This week, we're talking about finding your calling, being productive, and getting money management out of your way. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming, and let's get talking. I often go back and forth on the idea that everyone has some sort of calling that we're chasing or destined to find. So I'm very excited for today's conversation to take that idea head on and see what I can learn from it. Today's Money Buddy is going to help us with learning if we have a calling and how we can make it so that money doesn't have to get in the way of that calling that we may feel like we're destined to do. Have you ever felt like you don't have enough money left at the end of every single month, or that there's too much month left at the end of your money? Well, let's put that to bed and help you figure out how to get that money management out of your way and make it so that you can live the life that you desire to live. This is going to be a fun conversation today. But coming up before we get into the interview, I want to talk about FinCon, which is actually happening the week that I'm recording this. This episode will come out the week after FinCon. Guess what? I'm going to record an episode live in Portland, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that one because it's going to be extra fun. It's been a long time since I've done an episode in person, so we're going to do one live from FinCon. It's going to be really fun. And also, episode 200 is right around the corner. And I still need your questions for the episode. So please send them my way. Go on the website, fill out the contact form, email me. There's a ton of ways to get connected with me and to reach out. So please reach out and send me any questions you might have for episode 200. It can be about how do I do the podcast, how I do financial coaching. It can be about anything you'd like. It's an Ask Me Anything episode. So send your questions in for episode 200. And a couple quick shout outs to a couple listeners in Adelaide, Australia and Atlanta, Georgia. Some cool locations continue to show up on the map. And if you want to reach out, let me know where you're listening from. I would love to hear from you. Another really cool thing that I wanted to shout out here right at the very beginning of the podcast is a contact submission from Dave. Thank you so much for sending in this email. This is awesome. Here's what he said. He said, "We were paycheck to paycheck when we got engaged and married. We started out as singles and just YOLO'd, racking up debt. As part of our pre-marriage counseling, we took FPU, which stands for Financial Peace University, and started paying attention. We actually ran our budget on a calendar. I got paid weekly, bi-weekly, and on a gig schedule. My wife got paid on the 1st and the 15th. Some Fridays we got 4 paychecks, but each paycheck and bill was laid out by date and schedule. This paycheck pays this bill and some groceries. These paychecks go to debt, etc. We now do a reverse budget and spend whatever is left after saving and investing, all on just one income. It's pretty sweet now, but looking back, it's a miracle we even made it." Well, congratulations, Dave, and thank you so much for sharing this awesome story with the Money Buddies and sending it in on the website. If you have a story you want to share or a question you want to ask, please submit the contact form on my website, and I would love to hear from each and every one of you. Dave, thank you so much for reaching out. Honestly, this means the world. Being able to see someone engage and respond to the content I'm putting out there, I love it. Thank you so much, Dave, for submitting this. And if you have any question or story that you want to share, please reach out, and I would love to feature it on the podcast. But today's Money Buddy is Scott Maderer. In 2011, Scott and his wife, Carrie, took Inspired Stewardship as a business to serve Christian men and couples that are struggling to live out their callings. They work to help align the way you use your time, your talent, and your treasures so that you can identify and live a fully authentic life that allows you to authentically live your calling, serve others, and provide for your family. In 2017, they took the business full-time, offering assistance through one-on-one coaching, speaking, and workshops. Scott is the author of the book Inspired Living, and I'm excited to have him on the show today. This week's Money Talking Points are: does everyone have a calling? 2, how do you identify your calling? And 3, how do financial systems help you focus on other areas in your life? With those Money Talking Points in mind, let's get talking and welcome Scott to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be fantastic. This is, like I was telling you before we started recording, is a little bit tangential to money. It's definitely something that can impact your finances, of course. We always want to bring conversations that will help you level up your money, but there's a discussion out there of, does everyone have a calling? How do you identify your calling? I'm sure everyone has heard about this. Everyone's had these thoughts in their mind about how do you find your calling? How do you make sure you're working in your calling? Things like that. So I'm excited for this one. Let's kick it off with just the very first money talking point here, and let's start going around on this topic. Do you think everyone has a calling?
Absolutely. I do. But I think a lot of times the reason people don't think they do is because they're confused about what a calling is. We often think of calling as just kind of what we do for a living, and that's not actually what calling means.
Well, maybe can you expound on it for us a little bit then? What should
Sure.
we think about it as we're talking about it here?
So let's go back in time a little bit. We have two words in English that we use interchangeably. One is career and vocation. And nowadays we think of those like they're the same thing. They actually mean two totally different things. So career comes from the root word for cart. It's something that gets you from point A to point B. Nowadays, we think of it as the thing that I get paid to do. It's this thing that gives me money. And if you think about it, that's what money is. Money is not really something that we're not after money, but we are after what money can get us in terms of freedom and flexibility and the ability to make decisions that we want and do things and travel and feed our families and all of those things. So it's really not the money. It's the thing that money gets us. So our career is that transportation. It's that way of getting to something. Vocation literally comes from the same word as vocalization. Vocal. It means, the root word is vocalis, but it means to be called. So first off, by definition, if you're called, there's a caller. Now, I'm a person of faith. I ascribe that to God, but I don't care what label you put on it, the universe, karma, the way you're wired. It doesn't matter. The idea is that there's something bigger than you that you fit into. So if you recognize your calling is that why behind the what. So it's no longer just what do I do for a living? It's how do I show up in what I do for a living? How do I interact with other people? How I go for a walk in the morning? It's all of the tangential stuff that weaves throughout everything else. That's the calling, is that purpose behind what you do. So we focus so much on the what that we lose track of the why.
I think that's really interesting. And honestly, right out the gate, I was talking to my wife before this interview this morning, and I was thinking, this is definitely a topic I've gone back and forth on of does everyone have a calling? Do they not? Because I think I guess, pigeonholed myself into a place where calling is my job, right? And when you think of it like that, it can be very easy to get into this point where this big corporate job I'm working obviously isn't fully satisfying in my life, or right? Like there's always little things that you could nitpick at and you're like, I can never find my calling because it's going to be kind of impossible to find that perfect job. But just that reframing that you positioned right there is helping me reframe my mind as we go. And I'm sure helping listeners understand what this actually is that we're going to talk about today. How do people actually begin to identify their calling and work this out?
So the smart aleck answer is by accident. And what I mean by that is I don't think we ever sit down and get this kind of, I guess it could happen, but I've yet to meet someone where they've gotten this epiphany from above and this golden light shines down and it's like, this is your purpose. It doesn't happen that way. Instead, we kind of find it by working through things. So what I mean, a couple of quick exercises you could do. Quick in terms of they're easy to explain, not quick in terms of they're easy to do. This may take you some time. But one is to look backwards and the other is to look forward. So looking backwards. Sit down, write a piece of paper, put it in 3 columns, left-hand column, middle column, right-hand column. Down the left-hand column, just start brainstorming everything you've done in your life. Again,
That's a lot.
Don't everything, I didn't mean everything you got paid to do. I mean, anything you've done. And yeah, depending on your age, that could be a shorter list or a longer list. But the point is just kind of brainstorm. And then down the next column, start writing down things that gave you energy, things that gave you joy, things that brought joy to your life when you were doing that thing. So, by the way, no matter how bad it was, there's something about it. You can always find something that it's like, yeah, I really didn't like this, but that part wasn't. That part was good. That part gave me energy. That part fed my soul. And then, of course, in the last column, write down things about that activity that didn't bring you joy. By the way, this is also good when you're in that job where it's like, there's not everything fits, but some things fit. Because in part, it gets you to concentrate on what are some things that fit. You can get real creative and figure out ways to do more of that and less of something else. By identifying it, you can sit down and go, I like it when I do this. I don't like it when I do that. Maybe there's somebody else in here that likes it when they do that and doesn't like this part.
Yeah,
maybe we can figure out a way to work together, that kind of thing. So you can get real creative. But really the point of this is to just start brainstorming foundational information, because we don't ever stop and look backwards to think about what have I done and where did it come from and how does it fit together? But connecting dots happen in reverse when we look backwards. So this gives you the foundational blocks. The second exercise is to look forward. So the truth is, no matter what you do, if you don't have a destination in mind, you'll get nowhere.
Yeah,
because
you start spinning in circles. I think there's studies I think that say, if you don't have a direct direction you're going, most people find themselves back in the exact same spot.
Exactly. I mean, there's a squirrel sitting on the shelf behind me, and the reason there is because one of the things, and I belong to a coaching group, and we help each other. And one of the things we do, we all have a squirrel on our desk because it reminds us to think about opportunities when they come along and go, wait, is this actually an opportunity or is this just a squirrel? Something that's going to distract in the direction I want to go, or is it something that's moving me towards the direction? So that squirrel literally sits on my left shoulder and talks to me during the day.
It's like an angel devil kind of thing.
It's a little squirrel angel. So that kind of idea of sitting down and looking forward gives us a direction to head. Now, the truth is, whatever plan you come up with, it's never going to work exactly the way you have it planned, but that's not the point. The point is to have a direction, not have a perfect plan that's going to work exactly the way. It never happens that way. But let's sit down and do that. So here's the thought exercise. I actually did this while going on a walk and just talking into my phone. Sometimes it's better than writing for some of us to talk. So imagine for a minute, it's 5 years in the future. You're in an airport. I used to travel all the time on a plane, so I set this in an airport. And have you ever been on one of those trips where you go somewhere and then you're flying back, but you've got that airport in between that you got to land at? You've been on one of those, right? So imagine for a minute, you get off the plane, you're running to the gate, getting moving along, and as you get up to the gate, you look up, and there above the gate, it has flight delayed. It's like, yay! I'm now stuck in an airport in the middle of nowhere. So you go up, how long is the flight delayed? Turns out it's 4 hours. So you're now stuck in an airport for 4 hours. It's like, so you do what anyone does stuck in an airport for 4 hours. You either go find a bar or a restaurant, depending on your particular flavor of poison. So imagine for a minute, you walk into a restaurant 5 years in the future, and as you're walking through, you hear a voice from across the restaurant. Hey, how are you doing? You look over, and it's a friend that you've lost track of. They moved away. You got busy. They got busy. You haven't really talked to them much in years. They come running over. They're, Skylar, how are you doing? I haven't seen you. It's so great to see you. Are you here long? And you're like, well, I wasn't going to be, but now I'm here for 4 hours. Let's grab a table. And you grab a table in the corner. And you sit down at the table, and your friend looks at you in the eye and says, man, how have you been? How have the last 5 years been treating you? Imagine for a minute, you look your friend in the eye and you say, you know what? The last 5 years have been the best 5 years of my life because that's your job. Write what comes after because. What is true about your career? What is true about your money? What is true about your relationships? What is true about your spiritual walk? What is true about whatever? About your life. Be as broad as you can. And by the way, I've never had anyone write something down like, I've won the lottery and I have $40 million. That's not what we write down. Talk about stuff like, I feel safe. I feel secure. I'm able to provide. I'm able to, and flexibility. I'm able to do, maybe I'm able to travel or I'm able to do. That's the kind of stuff that people talk about because that's what's really important. And so between these two things, you've got a back-looking thing that starts giving you the building blocks and the pieces. You've got a forward-looking thing that starts being that filter where you could go opportunity or squirrel. Is this moving me in the direction I want or not? And between those two, you can start to identify, this is probably the stuff I'm being called to put more of in my life and prioritize. And again, not just in my career, but in all those other things too.
Yeah, wow. We are only 10 minutes into this interview, and I think we could leave it there, and everyone would have homework to do for the next week until next week's episode, and they would honestly be able to probably change their life and the direction they're heading in just by building that bridge between things they like to do currently and the next 5 years of what they would tell a friend. So, wow, Scott, thank you so much for just that exercise so far, even as we're just into the money talking points. And I think this is a great place to emphasize these money talking points can be so useful for you listeners to take to your friends and family and have this conversation and say, hey, how do you identify your calling? And your friend or family is probably going to give the answer that I gave, where it's my dream job, that's my calling. Those equal the same thing. And then you're going to be able to say, well, do they actually? And then you give them this little exercise that Scott just taught us, and you're going to be able to help them build that bridge and give them a sense of direction and identify those squirrels. That was super useful, Scott. So thank you so much for that so far. I'm excited to keep moving into this with some systems and how people can build things in and maybe help catch some of those squirrels in our life, right? The first thing I want to talk to you is how can we build systems to get us to that point and begin to build that bridge around us to get to the 5-year point?
Yeah, and I love the fact that you asked about systems, because all too often we look at things as the event that will change our life. We want the thing that's going to make everything right. And that's not how it works. It works by making little tiny changes and doing that consistently over a long period of time. That's really what makes change. It's systems are the building block of that. So part of it is stopping and going back to what we talked about a few minutes ago in terms of the why behind the what. All too often when we're looking at something like a budget and we want to think about our budget and what are we going to put on it, we think about things from the no side. We think about what we want to eliminate, what we want to take away. And what I like to do is flip that over and say, no. Build things from the yes side. So whether it's talking about your money, whether it's talking about your time, what is it talking about your relationships, your job, I don't care what area of your life you're looking at. What do you want to allow into that area? What do you want to say yes to? What's most important?
Yeah, that also makes it easier to move things away from where you do want to cut back. Instead of starting with this pure restriction approach, you're able to say, I thoroughly enjoy when we go camping, but camping maybe is a little pricey because you like to eat well when you go camping or something like that, right? But that's able for you to a whole lot easier to say. Yeah.
You camp at a Hilton.
Yeah, that too.
That's my preferred method of camping.
Maybe your vacations are a little bit nicer, but you need to cut back on your eating out budget. It's a whole lot easier to say, because of cutting back on my eating out, I'm able to travel more, versus just saying, I need to cut out the eating out and that just needs to stop cold turkey. So I like that approach of look for the positive.
And it lets you make different decisions than somebody else, and that doesn't mean your decisions are wrong. You could make a different set of decisions than I do, and we're both right, because we have different things that we prioritize and find important and value. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're different, and that's okay. Because what I see all too often is people buy into this. You hear about the latte effect, right? If you cut out your $5 a day latte, then you'll be a millionaire. And it's like, well, yeah, but if you really like your latte, fine, spend $5 on the latte, but say no to something else, something that isn't as important to you. And so, by building from yes, when you get to the stuff that you can't do, it tends to be the stuff that you kind of look at and go, well, I can't do that, but I kind of don't care. I'm okay not doing that.
Yeah, that's such a great place to put it, because like my wife and I have recently, I've talked about this on a couple episodes, instituted an Amazon cart day to allow us to reel in some of that spending that happens with that buy now button, right? And that's a perfect example of we get to Friday and we realize I don't really care about all these things we put in our cart. But to relate that to what you said, you get to the point where you're looking at your budget and you go, I want to stay in all the Hiltons wherever or see all the national parks or whatever, right? And you get to that line item and you're like, why is this a line item? Who cares? Like, it isn't as big of a deal. So that's such a great way to build a system around. Same thing goes with time. Maybe you like spending your time. Maybe you want to start a podcast. Okay, it's a great example. It's personally relevant. So maybe you want to start a podcast and that lights you up, these conversations. I always thoroughly enjoy them. But maybe there's something that I need to cut back on my time, like too much time on social media or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. When I'm able to commit my time to something positive like the podcast, it makes it very easy to say, yeah, this social media thing is a waste of my time. So that's a non-money example for everyone there.
Well, and time is an important one, though, because they are connected. Time and money are connected. But time is money. Well, no, it's not, but they are connected to each other, because the way we can use money to create time, and we can use time to create money. What I mean by using money to create time, obviously you can't directly go out and buy more hours, but you can leverage, go back to podcasting. You could hire an editor. Now all of a sudden you've got somebody doing part of the job that gives you time to do something else you want to do. So that's an example of leveraging money to buy time. And that kind of helps you because people have to think about what's more important to me in this instance, time or money. If I do it cheap, it tends to take longer, So do I want to do that and sacrifice time, or do I want to sacrifice money? So it's all comes down to thinking through the opportunity cost. That's the fancy word for Anytime I do something with something different with that same thing, whether it's an hour of the day, it doesn't matter. You can't really spend the same hour twice. You can't spend the same dollar twice.
Yeah, and buying your time back with money is something that my wife was told as she was graduating PA school. She was given the tip of, hey, you're going to be invested in your work as a physician assistant. You're going to be helping people. And maybe that means you won't have time to clean your house, but you value a clean house. Hire somebody.
Hire somebody.
That's exactly the kind of thing. Like, there's people who enjoy that. There's people who make money doing that in their life. And maybe that's something you appreciate and you want to have a clean home. Or another example is like car maintenance. I still change all of our vehicles' oil. I enjoy that. I've gotten really good at it. But when it comes to other repairs, I'm hiring someone. A perfect example, though. Like, you would rather either have some mobile oil change or whatever come out, change it, or drop it off at the shop. And that's completely fine. That's a perfect example of your two different options that are both the right answer for people.
Yeah. And it's always like that too. It's trade-offs, because I also, like, I've had a client in the past that I worked with that was a very high-end attorney, so his hourly rate, an hour of his time, he could earn a lot of money spending an hour of his time. But he loved gardening and mowing the yard and doing yard work. Everyone around him was like, dude, hire someone to do your yard. And he's like, no, I like it. It's like, well, then do your yard. Don't feel guilty. Just because everybody else has a yard person doesn't mean you have to have a yard person. But all too often we buy into that, and money, it shows up huge, where we buy into that idea of the way everyone does it is the right way to do it. Yes and no. Yeah, there's some best practices and things we should do, but then there's also that you should personalize that somewhat. And exactly what someone else does isn't going to work exactly the same way for you.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to leave that. I want to also move on to, you talk about these squirrels that can distract us on the way to that 5-year mark. Procrastination is kind of the more technical term you could give it, things distracting you. How do we avoid that procrastination when we're crossing that bridge to our 5-year dream?
Procrastination is one of those things that it's hard to deal with from a why point of view. And here's what I mean by that. All too often, what we spend all our time trying to figure out is, why am I procrastinating? And that's what I mean by the why point of view. It kind of doesn't matter why you're procrastinating. It just matters that you are. So we're back to systems. You want to build systems that make it easier to do the thing you want to do and harder to do the thing you don't want to do. So I'm an old physics teacher. I think of it in terms of friction and smoothness. Give you an example. Let's say you want to go for a walk every morning, and you have a tendency to hit the snooze button a few too many times, and you miss your walk. I want to go on a walk, but I just keep putting it off. So how can I make it harder to hit the snooze button and stay in bed? Move my alarm clock across the room. Just put it way over there, where I have no choice but to get out of bed to turn off the alarm clock. By the way, they actually sell an alarm clock that rolls off the table and runs around the room, and you have to chase it down. I know somebody that owns one. I'm like, that is awesome. I love it. I don't need it, but my son, for a while, I would have loved to have bought one of those for him. That kind of idea of make it harder to do the thing I don't want to do, stay in bed. But I also want to make it easier to do the thing I do want to do, go for a walk. So what can I do? I can lay out my clothes the night before. So here, right next to my alarm clock, when I go over there and turn off the alarm clock, there are my clothes and my shoes and my water bottle. And
your alarm clock could be under the clothes.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, exactly. It's all right there. Now it's making it a lot easier for me to go, I ought to go ahead and just put on the shorts and the shoes and go for the walk. So, and you can think of these two things together as smoothness and friction around anything. If you want to make it easier to write, okay, what can I do to bring that bar down and to make the part smaller? I don't want to go out to eat as much. Okay, what can I do to create friction around going out to eat and smoothness around eating at home? Meal planning, prep meals ahead of time, all of these things. And at the same time, maybe only go out to eat with cash and put that cash envelope somewhere like in a safe or something where you actually have to type in a code to get. Just that act of slowing yourself down makes it harder to do it. That's your cart day with Amazon.
Exactly.
What did y'all do? Y'all create friction around those impulse buys. It's all the same idea, and it's a system and a process that you can put into place around your health, around money, around time. It doesn't matter. It works the same way. Just stop and think, What can I do to create friction or smoothness around this thing to make it easier to do the thing I want to do and harder to do the thing I don't want to do?
Yeah. I love that. And my techie approach, my like nerd coming out with the alarm clock idea, is that I have my smart lights automatically come on when my alarm goes off. And if there's one thing that I don't fall asleep to, it's lights. So they'll start to grow and turn up and get brighter and brighter as I'm sleeping for longer past the alarm. So honestly, I wake up when the light comes on more than the alarm goes off. Like that's what triggers in my mind. And so that's a good example. I love the stories there about how we related it to waking up, going on a walk or a run. And if you want to make sure you go on a walk at a regular time, get a dog, because our puppy that's about a year old, she knows exactly when, I swear, I don't know how, she knows when 10:30 a.m. hits.
Because she's a watchdog.
For a walk. Yeah. She knows right on the dot. And she says, let's get out of here. We're going on a walk. She'll literally wake up from like a cold sleep and just sit up, and I know she knows what time it is. So get a dog if you really want to stay on schedule. But
okay, when you've got her trained to go get the leash and bring it to you.
That's a good idea. Okay.
I actually used to have a dog that she would go get the leash. She would bring it to you. You would clip it on, and then she would pick up the end of the leash and walk herself.
That's funny.
So she would like hold her leash. She could go for a walk.
That's hilarious. Maybe that's our next step. The leash is hung a little too high, so maybe we need to put it a little lower and see.
Put it a little lower. Get her to bring the leash.
I've thought about setting up some sort of contraption so she can put her like harness on herself, so she can just walk into it. See if I can figure out a way for it to clip itself. But that's a different podcast episode there. But we talked about a couple different things like going on walks, maybe writing your money. These are all things we can tend to procrastinate. Why do we procrastinate these things if they're so important?
Well, a couple of things. One is procrastination is often due to distraction, like we were talking about earlier. We're back to the squirrel. So there's this thing called the Eisenhower matrix. It's this idea of looking at things and thinking about it in terms of, is it urgent? Is it important? And where does that fall? So something could be urgent and important. House is on fire. Example of urgent and important, right? I need the fire out. It could be urgent, but not important. Example, my telephone starts ringing. It's urgent. It draws your attention. Real truth is not that important. Odds are good it's telemarketer at this point. My phone right now, there's like 5 people on the planet where my phone would actually give me a notification right now.
Right.
It ain't interrupting me because this is more important and I want to give my attention to that. So that's an example of something that is urgent and feels urgent, but actually isn't that important. And then there's things that are important, but not urgent. Oh, that's like doing your budget, looking at your money. That's having that conversation with your wife that you've been putting off. All of those things. It's really important, but it's easy to put off. And then, of course, there's the last quadrant, which is not urgent and not important. And that's maybe like binging Netflix or doing, that kind of thing. Most of us don't actually have a problem with the not urgent, not important. A lot of us will put those things off, but we'll put them off at the expense of doing urgent things, including urgent, not important things. And therefore, what gets sacrificed a lot of times is the urgent but important. That's the longer term things. That's doing the exercise that we started the show with. That's sitting down and looking at your money. That's all of these things. And that's one reason for procrastination is we haven't really prioritized doing important things. We prioritize doing urgent things. Big reason is you say yes to too many things.
Yes, that one's huge. I've been trying to pull back on that one myself.
You look at what you've been doing, any record of what you've been doing, step tracker, your location tracker on your phone, whatever it is, it shows when you look backwards what decisions you've already made. And a lot of times what ends up happening is we say yes to stuff that, again, isn't the important stuff. It's saying yes to stuff that really doesn't matter. And so it is important to sit down and do these periodic audits where you force yourself, you schedule a time on the calendar, you make an appointment with yourself. This is sometimes we're working with a coach or working with somebody else. That external accountability can be useful. I've actually even had people do things like put money up for it. It's like, I'm going to meet on Thursday. Skylar, you call me on Friday. If I didn't do it, you keep the money, that kind of thing. Or by the way, if you want a better one, put money in an envelope and make it out to an organization that you absolutely detest. Okay.
Yeah.
So like, if you're pro something, make it out to the group that's like completely the opposite of that group, and give that to your friend and be like, dude, if I don't do this, you get to mail that envelope. Okay,
That's hilarious.
Trust me on this one, that you will do it. Okay. But that's the idea, is creating something around it that, again, friction and smoothness, right? That makes it where you have to sit down and do it too. Now, what's interesting is you do that over and over again and you begin to build a habit. I've done a budget every single month with my wife since 2006, every month. I don't think we've missed a single month. Why? Well, because now it's just a habit. We just do it. And then we've also got things set up where it's really easy because we've simplified everything. But a combination of those things, of just getting that momentum going so that you can build up that habit over time, you got to build the momentum in the first place. So there's a few of the reasons that we procrastinate.
You mentioned there that you and your wife have been doing money for a very long time together, and it sounds like you've gotten this down to a science. And same with me and my wife, we've figured it out. It doesn't take us nearly as long to do what we call our budget meetings as it used to. What kind of things do you do to set up your finances in a way that allows it to run in that automatic fashion? Maybe so that you can focus more on finding your calling or whatever, right? So that you don't have to worry so much about money in the background. How do you set that up?
So when we started, it was all manual, meaning we were sitting down with the spreadsheet and calculator and writing stuff down and doing all of that, looking at our transactions and all of this. As we got things that worked, then we began looking for ways to automate. And the reason why I'm very careful to say it that way, is I think sometimes people jump to automation before they actually know what they're automating. And then all it does is mess things up. But, like now we're at the point where our electric bill, it just comes out of the account on the day it's due. And I know how much it is, and it's already in the budget, and it's all taken care of. We've automated a ton of stuff. We've also worked really hard to be debt free. And for my wife and I, that was an important thing for us. It simplifies our life. And then, like you said, it's also a matter of, because we've spent time earlier having hard conversations, we know what we value. And so now we can sit down, and it's a lot easier to look at something and go, hey, is that really, dear, is that important to you? Yes. Okay. Why? This. Okay, great. So like we have a budget line item for her crafting budget.
Yep. Same. Our wives are similar in that fashion.
Sounds like we got the same one. She loves crafting. I don't get it. But you know what? It makes her happy, and there's a line item in the budget. And as long as she spends from that line item, we don't have to have a conversation. Mm-hmm. It's just, she knows that's it.
There's frameworks.
There's and I've got stuff in the budget for me that I put in there, because it's okay. Because first we've prioritized the things that we both value and that we want to do together. And then we've prioritized those things for each of us. And we make sure that we've agreed on them ahead of time, and everything else becomes simple. So the only things we really end up having to talk about is oftentimes it's just a check-in, and then it's a few, maybe, hey, we've got this situation that's coming up this week or this month that's going to be a little different. My niece and nephew had a birthday the other day. Hey, we got to buy birthday gifts this week. Is that in the budget? Oh no, I forgot to add it. Let me make sure we've, money around. Yep. Okay, great. It's there now. That kind of thing. It's simple because it's been simplified. But again, to the beginning, if you're just getting started with this, there is a lot of value in actually doing the thinking and the planning kind of the quote hard way, because that's where you'll see those patterns of, I'll give you a real world example. Back when my wife and I were first starting to getting into budgeting, getting out of debt and doing all of that, we noticed that every September and October, we would have this little overspend in our budget. Had it happen 2 years in a row, and we're like, what is it about September and October that's weird? And then we realized that was when I was going to work in a corporate environment, and I would go into the break room and I would put my kids' thing down for their fundraiser, which then obligated me to buy some wrapping paper or popcorn that I didn't want or need from 3 other people's kids. So it was literally, so what did we do? We literally put a line item in the budget for buying stuff that we don't want from the other kids at the office, because we were going to do it. We might as well admit that we're going to do it and actually plan for it, rather than just keep being surprised by this. I'm surprised by this unexpected expense. No, you can expect that. You can plan that once you realize it's happening. So that's why that automation comes at the end, not at the beginning.
Yeah, that is a quote of the episode right there of I was surprised. You should call it surprised by this expected expense because that's really
Exactly.
what it should become. Like Christmas is a perfect example. That's what I thought you were going to say is it was Christmas shopping. And guess what, everyone listening, believe it or not, Christmas comes every 12 months and you're probably going to have some sort of gift obligation to
It is
purchase
always in
things for
December.
everyone else. It's same time every year. So you have 12 months to save for it every single year. And yet it always catches people off by surprise. We're being a little
Always
tongue in
surprises
cheek
people.
about it, but it's the truth. Like it comes up, everyone's birthdays come up the same time every year. And those sort of things you can actually plan for and you can spend on those things and enjoy spending on those things versus having to pay off credit card debt every single month.
Yeah,
Because like
you don't have
said,
any guilt about it. You're going to spend and you just spend it, and it's okay. I go on vacation. I'm not guilty when I come back because we spent
There's a
what we were
plan.
going to. The same thing. I'll go even a step further. Not even things like Christmas. You can actually, for unexpected things. Here's what there's a difference between unexpected and not able to plan for it. Like I'll have people come up and they'll be like, my car broke. How could I have prepared for my car breaking? And it's like, how
They all
long have you
break.
been driving? Cars break. I mean, they get flat tires. They need oil changes. Water pumps go out. It's a fact that if you are driving a vehicle, you are going to have a repair. So plan for it. Now, I can't tell you exactly when it's going to happen. I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen, but I can tell you something's going to happen. And that's why, having some reserves, having some emergency funds, those sorts of things, that's where that starts coming in, or putting in a fund for things like car repairs, things that are going to happen. You just don't know when or what, but it's going to happen. So it's not really a surprise. You can plan for it much more than people let themselves do.
Yeah, and it's kind of like this ignorance thing where you decide not to plan for it, not worry about it, then you're surprised when the transaction hits. Think about it. If it's mechanical and has moving parts, it's probably going to need some amount of repair and it's going to be a few $100. So you probably need that buffer there to help take care of those things. And I love to say the emergency fund helps emergencies become minor inconveniences. And the same goes with cars, like flat tires. Those could be a big deal that cause you to not be able to get to work, which causes you to potentially lose income. And it's just this like death spiral. But if you had $300-400 sitting there, then you get new tire or new tires and you're done. You're back to work the next day and things are easy peasy.
By definition, having some reserves, having an emergency fund cuts your emergencies in half. Here's why.
Because they're just not emergencies.
Not only that, but it cuts them in half, literally. Because here's the thing. Go back to the car. Your car breaks and you have no money. You have car emergency and you have a money emergency. But if I have money, I just have the car emergency. I don't have a money emergency. I just write a check, and I fix it. So is it still a problem that your car broke? Of course it's still a problem. You still got to fix the car or take it to the shop or do whatever. Maybe it's inconvenient, but it's not as big of a deal because you just know you can stroke a check for it. So, I jokingly say if you want to cut your emergencies in half, just have some money in the bank, and it automatically does it. They say every 12 to 18 months, most people have an emergency that costs them about $1,000 on average. Mm-hmm. Okay. And if you stop and think about that, every 12 to 18 months, you're going to have something in your life that costs you some amount of money, and so you just prepare for that.
Yeah, and $1,000 a year is not that much a month. It's not that much a paycheck.
Nope.
So if you just honestly just set up some sort of savings account, an emergency fund, right? It's already named and coined. Like it already exists. But Scott, one of the things you did mention was working with coaches and getting help from others and getting some accountability buddies. I like to call them money buddies, like a gym buddy, except for your money. So there's kind of two avenues you can go here. You could hire someone like a financial coach or a consultant or a planner, or you could even just potentially start talking about money or your productivity systems or that goal to bring it back to that 5-year conversation in the airport. You could have that now with a friend and maybe work through the exercise together. Where do you think the value lies in talking to other people about these sort of things?
A lot of us are motivated by external accountability of it. So there is a certain degree to which if people are working with me on productivity or money or whatever, it's like, oh, I got to talk to Scott on Thursday. There's a certain amount of that. If it's your buddy, oh, I got to talk to my buddy on Thursday. You're back to like the gym. If you got to meet Bob at the gym, you're more likely to actually go to the gym. It's like, I don't want to let Bob down. So there's that piece of it. Another factor is this. All too often, we feel like we're the only person dealing with this. we're unique. We've got shame about it. We've got guilt about it. We've got fear about it. We've got all of these negative emotions around it. And the truth is, talking about it starts to normalize it. Because guess what? You're not the only one. I don't care what it is. You're not the only one. It's a lie you're telling yourself. And we're all dealing with it in different ways. Some of us are further along the journey, but my wife and I paid off $78,856.42. We were in big time debt. And I made like $40,000 a year when we started that journey. It's those sorts of things that you realize that, oh, wow, debt, the problem that a lot of people are dealing with, or not being able to talk about money. That's a problem that a lot of people are dealing with. And so normalizing it and having those conversations also lets us begin to realize we're not alone in this. We're on that journey with other people, and not because especially in the Western culture, we sort of made it, it's uncouth to talk about money. Talk about sex, religion, and money and politics. Those are the things you never talk about. And the one of those that I kind of don't agree with is money. I'm like, we should talk more about money. There's no reason to have the shame that we have around it.
Yeah. It's a great place to leave it on there, Scott. There's no reason to not talk about money. It's something we're all dealing with, whether you have a ton of money or have no money at all. Everyone's gone through some sort of situation that's similar and that they can help you through, whether you're trying to figure out how to invest because you have more money than you really thought you did because you're starting to make good money, or you're trying just to figure out how to get by because you don't have a sizable paycheck yet and you're not sure where to even go from here. Everyone's gone through some sort of situation that's similar, or they know someone who has. So if we're all talking about it, we can easily build these networks of money buddies where we can refer to each other and help each other out. We're approaching the end of our time here, so I want to make sure we get to our last two questions. This has been a fantastic conversation, so thank you for coming on. But the first of the last two questions is, where can people connect with you or find you online?
So I actually put together a landing page just for your listeners that has some resources, some information about where you can find me online. I have a book called Inspired Living. All of that is over there. And if you go to inspiredstewardship.com, which is my website, and then just /money space talk, so money space talk, you'll be able to find it over there. It has, like I said, some free resources, stuff you can download just to check out for free. Information about my book, Inspired Living, and a few other tools and resources over there. And it's the best way to connect with me. And again, that's at inspiredstewardship.com /money space talk.
Perfect. And of course, link will be in the show notes. If you're driving or doing something that you can't type that in, head over to the show notes or the description on YouTube. And you got to go check this video out on YouTube so you can see Scott's squirrel over his shoulder. So make sure to check it out there. But one final question I got for you, Scott, that I ask every guest, something similar. What's one thing from our conversation today that you wish you would have known sooner?
Honestly, it's that idea of talking to the people around us about money, what we ended with at the end. Yeah, I was one of those people that dealt with a lot of shame, a lot of fear around money. At one point in my life, when my wife and I were going through the worst of it, I was suicidal because of money, which, by the way, is the number one cause of male suicide, is financial problems and financial issues. And I think if I had had men around me and other people that I could have talked to and been open about it, I don't think I ever would have gone to that dark spot. So that's another reason that I encourage people to talk to each other, talk and be more open with their partner, with their spouse, with the people around them about money, because I think it helps us get rid of that shame and that fear.
Wow, that's a powerful spot to leave it on. Make sure we're talking about money, helping each other out. Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much to Scott for coming on the podcast. And I got a couple quick things to wrap up here as we round out the show. I want to wrap up the money talking point of how do financial systems help you focus on other areas of your life? Well, a financial system will make your life and your money so much easier because you don't have to worry about it. Who cares when your bill's clear? Because you know that you got them in your email well before they're due. You put them in your budget and put them in your system, and then autopay handles the rest. And I've come a long way on this. I used to have our credit card payments be paid manually. I would pay them on the first every month with whatever balance we accrued during the last month instead of the statement balance. I was paying them off every single month. I was never accruing interest on our credit cards. But now, auto pay is the way. It's the only thing I could imagine doing is auto pay with the statement balance on the due date, or maybe even a few days before the due date if you're really worried. And now the system takes care of itself. And I don't have to worry and waste so much time on my credit card bills. They're just easy, simple, and automatic. So you can set up the same sort of a system with your budget, with a budget meeting agenda. Check out my budget meeting guide resource on the website at moneytalk.show/resources. My wife and I now can focus on planning fun vacations because we know our financial system is working in the background doing its own thing. We can focus on never having money fights and avoiding those because our system works for both of us in the background. How big of a deal would this be for you? What would it be like for you, especially if you're married, to go an entire month without a money fight or maybe even a money argument with a friend because you're not sure where you can spend money or the rest of your financial system? You're not sure how that fits into your day-to-day living. What would it mean to you if you could focus on other things and not have to worry so much about money? Because frankly, I think that's the point that all of us teaching about money get to, is the point where we're not really worried about it. And that's kind of next level, to think, yeah, I am good with money. I enjoy handling my money, but I don't think about it as much as people who don't enjoy handling their money. And I would 1000% say that that is true. Even though I love my spreadsheets, I love managing money, I love financial planning, I very likely think about it a whole lot less than someone who is stressed and someone who does not have their money under control. Which you'd think would be the opposite. Because I enjoy money, you think I'd think about it more, but I actually think about it less. And that's a point that you can get to when you have a financial system set up in your life. But that's a wrap on this great episode, and thank you to Scott Maderer for coming on this episode. And I know it wasn't perfectly aligned with money in your wallet, but it does have a lot of impact on each and every one of your wallets. Figuring out your calling and setting up a system in your life so that you can do what you want to do can prove to be extremely beneficial, especially when it comes to not having to worry about money. We learned that money is not the end goal. It's a GPS for life, helping you avoid financial potholes and getting to the fun stuff faster. And thank you to trusty autopay and budget meetings. That way you can spend more time planning vacations and more time doing what you want to do with your money than arguing about bills. Imagine a month without a money fight. It's like finding a unicorn in your backyard. And unlike a unicorn, going a whole month without a money fight is totally possible. Now, for the hard-hitting fact to leave you pondering with. A well-organized financial system can not only save you time and stress, but it can also strengthen your relationships. So go and set up those budgets. And also, don't forget that an emergency fund cuts your emergencies in half. Because not only will there now not really be that big of an emergency, but you're not going to have a financial emergency on top of it. And most of the unexpected expenses are really expenses that should be expected and planned for. Car maintenance is a perfect example. More times than not, it is not an emergency. Your tires wearing down and needing new tires, that should never be an emergency. Your oil needing replaced, never an emergency, because those are things that are going to happen to your vehicle. They're expenses you have to really truly consider. Most of your unexpected expenses are really expected and you need to plan for them. But that does it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. The best way to stay up to date and connected with all things Money Talk is to subscribe to the podcast and sign up for my email list. Head over to moneytalk.show, submit your name and email right there on the homepage. Use the contact page to send me your question for episode 200. And if you're looking to get started with budgeting, I am a partner with My Budget Coach. It's a platform that connects your budget and your expenses and everything that you need out of a financial app directly to me, your financial coach. I'd love to work with you over there and help you get started with budgeting. The link is in the show notes. Remember, the best way to learn from today's episode is to go and have a money talk about today's topic with a fellow money buddy. Look in the show notes and take one of the 3 money talking points, send that to your friend with a link to today's episode, and start your money talks today. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Money Talk. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Money Talk. This show is provided for informational and entertainment purposes and may not be specific to your unique situation. Please be sure to do additional research before making any financial decisions.